time to yours. Welcome to EMS at Sea Level. I am joined by Mike Konrad, who it appears started Aqueous Technologies when he was still at school, because they're celebrating their 30th anniversary this year. Big milestone, Mike. Tell me a little bit about what you were doing when you decided to start Aqueous and what actually was the germ of the creation of that business.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Always a pleasure to talk to you, fellow podcaster and such. I call myself a reluctant entrepreneur. I am not the person who was, born to own a company and run a company. I had no desire for that. I was, fat, dumb, and happy and content at my job, my day job, which was in this industry. I started in this industry in 1985. When I was 4, and just before child labor laws were enforced. And I, so I started in 85. In 1989, Montreal Protocol, which was a big environmental treaty that changed the way boards would be cleaned or not cleaned forever. Basically the solvents that were very common in our industry, trichloroethane, freon, et cetera, were going to be banned in 10 years, starting in 1989. So by 99, they'd be banned. So sometime in the late 80s, I had this idea, and it wasn't really my idea. There were a couple of companies that made cleaning machines that were basically dishwashers, and they were a little dorky, and they were frequently put in the back behind the curtain so that customers wouldn't see it, because they worked okay, but they weren't great. And I thought, because then everyone was cleaned with solvent when they cleaned at all, or they cleaned in a big 40-foot inline machine with water. And, I had this idea, like, these guys are onto something, but I don't think they know what they're onto. And I think there's going to be a big market. So I made a pitch to my boss, and I said, this is coming down. This is coming down in less than 10 years. We're going to be out of solvent. Doesn't seem to be a new solvent coming. What are we going to do? I think we should come up with a cleaning machine. And he said, yeah, what do you know? You're just our sales guy. And I'm like, oh, I might be the sales guy, but I can read, and this is what I read, and this is the feeling I'm getting as a sales guy. Yeah. And he just resisted it. And then finally I said, look, I'll do it on my own. I'll still work here. I'll engineer this machine at night and on the weekends, my time, my money, my risk. And I'll just bring you something when I'm done. And would you at least promise to consider it? He goes, okay, fair enough. So I got together with a high school, or actually an elementary school buddy of mine. We went back that far. He's a pretty clever engineer, and we developed this machine. And I basically said it's gotta work, number one, and it can't look dorky like these converted dishwashers are looking. We need to make it look sexy, whatever an engineer's version of sexy is. It has to look engineer sexy, right? Yeah. So we developed this machine in about 6 months, and we took it back to my employer, and I pitched them, and he liked it. So this was about 2 months before NEPCON West. Remember that show? And in Anaheim, California. And I said, let's just throw it in the booth, throw caution to the wind. I'll stick the company logo on it, your company logo, and throw it in the booth, see what happens. He said, okay. So we sold 5 of them. Wow. On the show floor. Yeah. And now all of a sudden he's listening to me, and I had this false sense of bravado, this false sense of credit that, now I'm the big guy on the campus, right? I saved the company, because we weren't doing too well. I saved the company. So we had about 6 months later, we sold a bunch of machines, and I couldn't keep up with production because I was building them at night and weekends. And it turned out I'm a really good salesman. I'm not a very good assembler of equipment. So I realized there was something wrong with this picture. And again, I didn't have any desire to be an entrepreneur. I didn't want to own my own business. I wanted the company I worked for to be successful, because I figured the success kind of trickles down. So I made a deal with my boss. I said, look, I'll sell it to you for my out of pocket, which was not that much money. And you have the rights to it. And good for the company, good for me. And he took that deal in a heartbeat. And then now he owned the machine. And I had an idea. We had a product meeting coming up where we were going to suggest products for the upcoming year or two. And I thought I was going to be carried into that room on a chariot and fanned with large grape leaves and fed grapes. And, I thought I was all that. My next idea was to basically take that technology and make it no drain, closed loop. Because we've solved the problem of CFCs, chlorine molecules going up the stack, which is the reason these solvents were banned. But now people are starting to ask, well, what's going down the drain? And I figure that's just going to be the next thing.
Got to go somewhere. Yeah.
Right. So I said, I think we should do closed loop. I have some ideas. And then someone else suggested something which I thought was dorky. And my boss said, nah, we're going to go with this other dorky idea. He didn't say dorky idea, but in my mind, we're going to go with the dorky idea. And then he said one word that started my company instantly in my head. The one word started with F and was 4 letters. And it's not the word that you're thinking. I said, I think you're wrong. And he looked at me and he went, fine. Like, might as well have been another F word. It was absolutely. A dismissive, you don't know nothing, that type of, I just felt small at that point and insignificant. And I thought whatever I managed to contribute to the company just didn't matter. And that was a huge pill to swallow. And in that moment, in my head, fortunately, I didn't express it out loud. In my head, I started my new company and I quit, although it took another few months to do that. But that was the beginning of my journey. And I gave my notice. I gave a 2-week notice, but then I also put in writing that I was planning on potentially competing. So although I'm giving a 2-week notice, I'm happy to walk out today, right now, because I don't want to be here under false pretenses. And they asked me if I would stay a month. I said, okay, I'll stay a month. So I gave them a month's notice. And on my way home from my last day of work, I signed a lease on a small multi-tenant business park building. And 3 months later, I got served with a giant lawsuit from my employer. But
welcome to corporate America.
Welcome to America. Right. Your welcome papers will be in a form of a subpoena. So we fought the lawsuit. We lost pretty much everything. Any investment capital I had managed to scrounge up was, gone in 10 seconds to the lawyer. But we had a trial and we won on everything. They lost on everything. And it took us a couple of years to lick our wounds and pay back the attorney. And when we finally paid her off, she admitted to me, she goes, I never thought I'd see it. I'm like, I kind of wish I knew that before. But we paid her off every penny. And it was a lot of money. It was way more money than, I could ever dream of back then.
Yeah.
So, but we did it and we survived. And so that's my reluctant entrepreneur. I didn't want to do it, but I was passionate about the idea. I was passionate about the product, not so much a company, but I just thought the world could use this product. Whoever makes it, I didn't care. Turned out no one was willing.
It's really interesting, isn't it? It's a fascinating time in terms of technology that you were in there, but that someone could do a really dorky version of a dishwasher, and that could be your competitor, and that could be really popular. And when I look back to that time, I was in the printed circuit board industry, and there were just so many people cobbling together solutions for different parts of the processes, and processes were changing and evolving really fast. And you fast forward to now, where the SMT line and basically the placement of and soldering of components to printed circuit boards is very refined. I wonder, and I don't know what your view is on this, I wonder if you think it would be possible to be that innovative and creative and start a business now. And you actually do a podcast on that kind of entrepreneurialism. Do you think it's much, much harder now, or do you think it's just different?
I think we're all, to some degree, victims of thinking it's harder today than it was yesterday. I used to have arguments with my father that when he would say it was just as hard for me when I was your age. I'm like, no, it's harder today. But I don't know if that is a reality or if it's perception.
It feels harder.
It does feel harder. So it probably is measurably harder in some ways and immeasurably easier in other ways. When I started my company and when you were, cutting your teeth in our business. There was no internet, and the people with ad budgets got to the front of the line. They put the word out first. Remember NEPCON? In fact, this led to the demise of NEPCON. The big got bigger. The more times you exhibit, the amount of square footage you purchase determined your priority to pick the booth the next year. So the small got smaller, the big got bigger, to the point where we were squeezed out in tents and parking lots. And
they were yachts on the marina.
They were yachts on the marina and $1 million firework displays for their happy hour. And that was incredibly difficult. The cost of running one ad, full color, back then you could choose between color and black and white, but an ad in say EP&P back in the day, right, was like $6,000, $6,000 for one ad. And I think what helped our business, because we started in '92, and that was kind of the beginning of, beginning stages of the internet. We all of a sudden that became a level playing field.
Yeah. In
fact, if you were good at designing websites and exploiting that technology, we found that small companies like ours, when the internet was new and email was new and webinars were web of what, they were, no one knew what they were. We embraced all that extremely early. So we got really good at it very early. And the big companies, with all of their assets and all of their clout, turned out they had clout and assets in yesterday's technology. They no longer were as relevant as they thought they were. And we were able to at least get the word out. That doesn't mean that people are going to believe you, but we were at least able to put an argument for a better way out there, and people listened. And I think that's the other end of this, the other side of the coin. That was harder in many ways, but it's easier in other ways.
Things certainly changed. And I think the other way potentially it's easier now is, or certainly has been over the last few years, is the ability to raise investment capital. If you've got a smart idea in the manufacturing space, there's a lot of there's a lot of interest in it at the moment in terms of that. But coming back to your journey, so you start the business. How fast was it in terms of customer pickup? What was the kind of product ramp like, or the volume ramp like in those early years?
The first year we made a profit, but that's because we had very low expenses. I bought used furniture. It all looked like it came off of the USS Missouri. It looked like World War II surplus metal furniture, painted gray. And we had a pretty low cost business park, multi-tenant business park space, about 1,000 square feet with one bathroom. And so our costs were pretty low. The biggest cost we had was the lawsuit. That totally sidetracked us. But we didn't need much other than to feed the attorney. We didn't need much. So it didn't take anywhere near the amount of revenue it takes today just to break even back then. We had very few employees. Back in those days, the criteria to be an employee was, do you have a pulse and will you not steal from me? You're hired. We'll figure out how to make it work. And we had nothing to lose. So there was a sense of adventure that, although those were very difficult days, and I certainly don't want to repeat them, in a crazy kind of sick way, I miss those days. There's a certain amount of nostalgia. Nostalgia kind of takes away the bad taste and only leaves the good taste and the good smell, not the bad smell. So nostalgia has a way of filtering your memory, but we got a lot done. And we, as crazy as this sounds, and it just sounds like, Pollyannish, we were out to change the world. We were literally out to do something different. We considered ourselves a disruptive force. I didn't even know the term disruptive force.
Disruptive, when
I was 32. I've never heard of that term before, since heard it many times, but we kind of considered ourselves different. We wanted, if everyone painted their machines white, we would paint ours black. We we looked at all the prices out there. We did a whole competitor survey and we said, okay, we're going to be more than everybody. We're just going to, if we're going to lose on price, we're going to lose right away. You know, let's fail fast, right? We're just going to fail fast. And people said you can't do certain things. And we're like, okay, that's an invitation to do it. You know, it's a challenge. And we really had a goal larger than ourselves. And that was to make the world a better place. As dorky as that sounds, that was our goal. And the products that we developed were just tools for that. So I think we had our priorities right. I can't take credit for that. I think that's just my sci-fi mind and, you know, what, you know, the little bit of fantasy going on and delusions of grandeur or whatever for the company. But it did tell us what was an important battle and what wasn't an important battle.
Yeah.
But I learned so many lessons. I learned, oh my gosh, I wrote a book actually. I haven't published it yet. And I don't know if I will. It was a bit of a therapy for me to write the book while I can still remember things. And, you know, it's basically not a book of what to do. There's plenty of business books of what to do. It's a book of what not to do. These are all the mistakes I made. And these were expensive mistakes. I could have been wherever I am today. I could have been there in half the time if I could have avoided those mistakes.
Made those mistakes. No, I was told once by someone, I can't remember exactly who it was, but it was a really interesting entrepreneurial lesson. And it's everybody knows what they're good at. Focus on figuring out what you're bad at and decide whether you're going to get better at it or get someone to do it for you. And 9 times out of 10, you should probably get someone else to do it for you, because if you're an entrepreneur and you're struggling to do something, you're probably just not good at it. So I think that was a good lesson. So your book would be probably full of those lessons. What I love, Mike, is that creative energy that you get from a startup. And I work with some startups now, and that's one of the things I really enjoy. But combine that with the idea that you're changing the world for the better, and it kind of multiplies the energy, doesn't it? It gives you that energy just to create and disrupt and kind of shake things up a little bit.
Yeah. And I think if you concentrate only on yourself, you reach a plateau where, you know, good becomes the enemy of great, and, you know, you're happy. You're again, fat, dumb, and stupid again. You know, you're just, you know, the money's coming in and you got everything you need and most of the things you want, and that's it. If the goal is to make the world a better place, that there's no end in that. You can't just say, okay, it's now a better place, you know. It's endless work. And to me, by keeping the focus on something bigger than us, that just allows me, after 30 years, to still feel as fulfilled today, if not more, than I did in 1992. You know, when I was quite literally rummaging through garbage cans looking for postage stamps that didn't have the cancel mark on it so I could reuse them. You know, that's how bad things were then. So, and I think also 30 years in business, maybe for a normal person, it might only take 10 years in business, but for me, it took probably the greater part of 30, is you realize where the priorities should be and shouldn't be. You know, I always thought, because I was kind of a salesman at heart, you know, if someone said, what's your occupation? You know, I used to just go sales, you know, because I had so many jobs over the years since I was a kid in sales. And it turned out I can sell stuff. But I used to think, maybe because of that salesman mentality, that the solution to every problem was growth. And then I found out that's the genesis of almost every problem, is uncontrolled growth, too much growth, because growth costs money. Scaling costs money. Scaling is an investment. And if you have, you know, this much trouble at a certain revenue, double that revenue, and you have disproportionately more trouble. And I had to learn, which was really difficult for me, because I wouldn't have said I had an ego until I look back and go, holy, wow, I had an ego. But it's important to have that ego, and I'll get to that part in a second. But I had to let go of that, because the ego was serving me, not the greater good of the company, you know, which I like to think is the greater good of the world. So I had to let go of that. And once I let go of that, or at least hid it away in a dungeon somewhere. It's
Yeah.
probably still there. Then that allowed me to go, no, you know, saying no is actually more profitable than saying yes. And not only, I used to think of the whole competitive scene as win-lose. You know, it's like win-win-lose, or win-lose-win, win-lose-win. Someone chooses me instead of them, I win. They lose, and because they lose, I win again, right? And it was predatory. It was awful. And you know, I've just kind of learned that no one wins unless everyone wins. You know, the right person will get the order, and the right customer will find the right partner. And we're not always the right partner. That's fair. No problem. We respect our competitors. We compete. That part hasn't gone away, but we respect them because they're out there beating the same drum we're beating. They're pushing cleaning to improve reliability, just like we push cleaning to improve reliability. They do it differently. They get a little bit more money if they get the sale, but that's okay because they're promoting the technology that we are promoting. We're on the same team in many ways. So that took a long time to get my head around.
Yeah.
But I talked
so
about
let's
ego.
roll back to ego.
Yeah.
Is ego essential in entrepreneurialism?
Yes. Here are the skills required to start a company from scratch. These are the skills. Without these, you're probably not going to be successful. Ego, arrogance, naivety, a very poor assessment of risk.
Yeah.
Those passion, money, talent would be helpful, but those are prerequisites to start a company because U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, and you have your equivalent of that in Australia, and it's probably around the same percentage, state that 75% of all startups fail in 10 years. So they're gone in 10 years, 50% in 5, and almost 50% in 3. And then certain industries are like 80%, like the restaurant business, the food industry. There's a 75% chance that every new business will fail. Only
who would take that bet?
Only 25 out of 100 do it. So if I go to Vegas or Atlantic City or wherever gambling is allowed, and they have a table, you know, I'll go play roulette. Roulette is, I'll say 50-50 in round numbers. It's not quite 50. It's like 50 and a half to, 49 and a half or whatever. But say it's 50-50. It's even money. It's even money if you play the outside of the table. 35-1 if you play inside. Even money if you play outside. So if I put $1 down, I can win $1. So my dollar can win me $1. But imagine if they had a table game like that in Vegas, where there was for $1, you have a chance to win 25 cents and lose your dollar trying to do it. If at least I'll lose $1 for the chance to win $1. I will not risk losing $1 for the chance to win 25 cents, which are the statistics of business failures. So you have to have some sense of ego. You have to look at 25% odds of success as, well, they're not referring to me, so that ego has to mask that inconvenient truth. So you have to have a poor assessment of risk. That's what ego helps, cover up. You have to be a little bit arrogant because you have to think you can overcome that risk, and you have to be naive and ignorant to maybe not know the risk is there. Otherwise, if you were fully informed, you'd have to be a psychopath to do it, right? It'd be crazy. So now those skills that allow an entrepreneur to, jump into the deep end of the cold pool and think they'll survive. Those are the same skill that they will accelerate you, they'll catapult you, but they're only good for a short time. Those skills burn up pretty quickly, and those same skills will kill your business. So I liken it to, kids. You're old when you start using phrases like kids these days, right? But kids these days don't have any experience with a manual transmission car with a stick shift, right? I grew up driving a manual transmission. You're from England. That's pretty much all they had back then for a lot of years was a manual,
and still have,
and in many cases still have. Right? They get a little better mileage. But anyway, I liken the skills required to start a business as first gear in a car, highly leveraged. Great ratio, lots of RPM for very little speed. And you can't start in fourth gear. You'll just burn your clutch up. You can only start in first. but you can't go far in first. And if you don't shift out of first, if you don't let go of ego, arrogance, naivety, ignorance,
and maybe a bit of control,
yeah, then you'll over rev and you'll burn up your engine and you'll fail,
yeah,
right? Just like a car. So there's a time for first gear. Those are the traits I mentioned. Then there's a time for second gear, which is a little bit less of those traits and some new ones. And then eventually there's time for overdrive. And once you get to 30 years, you're kind of in overdrive, right? You're propelling, you're pretty consistent. You're not
all these
turning
days
a lot of
you're
RPMs.
into adaptive cruise control, probably.
We got all that right. Exactly. Good analogy. But that's what an entrepreneur needs to adapt new skills or acquire new skills through good hiring. I used to think, again, the arrogance and the ego, I used to think I was the smartest person in the room. And when I first started my company, maybe I was, but it didn't take much. Because again, all they needed was a pulse and a breath to, and a promise not to steal from me, and they'd be hired. My goal today is to be the stupidest person in my company, because I think I'm pretty clever. And if I can be the stupidest person,
you've got
my company will succeed, because there's people smarter than me running it. So it really, it takes a village.
Yeah. So Mike, we could talk all day about the theory of business, and we've both got views on that, and actually they're surprisingly, well, not surprisingly, but they're very aligned. In that 30 years, talk to me about some of the key milestones, some of the things that happened that really triggered success, that really challenged the business, the things that you look back on that 30-year journey and say, hey, that was a pivotal moment for us.
Yeah. The things that challenged the business was our unwillingness to say no to customers. Customers want something a little bit different. And all we could think about are the sales we won't get if we don't have that product. It turned out no one has ever asked for it before, but that's, again, sales mentality. It's like, no one likes to say no. So we said yes to a lot of things. And we were afraid that if we annoyed our customer, if we disappointed our customer, somehow our reputation would be affected. I think I suffered, certainly, probably the company suffered through me, imposter syndrome for quite a few years, because we were up against some well-known, established big boy, big girl players in our business. And, who were we, right? No one knew who I was. So, and we were doing things differently, and that weighed on me and the company. So we said yes to a lot of things, and it turned out that those were just giant distractions that kept us from doing what we were really good at. So that took a while to get out of. Where probably my proudest accomplishment and what really put us on the map is we made a commitment to have 100% of our products available with no drain, zero discharge. And that sounds salesy, but and yeah, of course, we did it because we want people to buy that technology. We were the only ones doing it at the time. But more importantly, we wanted, I talk about save the world, make the world a better place, not save the world. That's grandiose, but just make the world a better place. And we thought, well, that's the way to do it. And even though we're a tiny company, we're not saving a lot of water in the big scheme of things. It starts with 1 gallon, and now we save 20 million gallons a year. That's our current numbers. But so there was a reason why, technically speaking, there was a reason why other companies didn't go zero discharge, because it raised the cost of operation. And those companies figured people aren't going to spend money to be green. And we looked at it differently. We said, well, how much does it cost not to be green? There are intangibles, there are fines, there are inspections, there are discharge permits one has to get. Now you're on a list subject to inspection. There are all these intangibles to not be green. And why not be green? And then as we made a commitment to do it, regardless of the cost, we're going to offer zero discharge. And even if it's more expensive to operate, we're proud of that, because you don't get anything for free. And the end of the day, because we started building those types of machines, we created this scale where all of a sudden we figured out ways to actually be able to design a machine that can be operated less expensively than a traditional discharge machine. So, but we didn't start with that. We started with no fear. We started, well, there was fear, but we started with overlook the fear and just do what's right. As again, Pollyannish as that sound, do what's right. We'll figure it out later. Just do what's right. And that really, I think it's hard to say, you know, it's success by 1,000 cuts, not death by 1,000 cuts, but it's hard to say which one kind of put us on the map. But in my mind, anyway, and I'm probably looking through a filter, but in my mind, it was our commitment to the environment, our commitment to make things zero discharge when things were going just fine. Customers weren't demanding it. We created that market. You know, customers weren't demanding a mouse. They weren't demanding a graphic user interface.
No.
That came, you know, no one demanded a glass screen with no keys, right?
Yeah.
It just showed up one day and the world gravitated toward it. And, you know, I didn't compare that because those technologies weren't out then, but it's the same experience. We said, we're going to take the lead. Someone has to, we're going to take the lead. And it's not for a competitive advantage because it's now we're more expensive than anyone else. We could lose market share as a result of this move. But instead it, you know, it turned out the world kind of thinks like us. They would rather be green if it's not too costly. And
it propelled you.
It propelled us. It put us in a different category. And then the other milestone was, and we've talked about this before, Phil, we were involved in all the awards programs. You know, you spend a few bucks, you have a good ad agent, and all of a sudden you start winning all these awards, and obviously you have a good product. And we won our first award. We ran an ad, you know, hey, we won an award, good for us. And then we won a second award, so we ran another ad and we called it a double feature. And then we won 3, we called it a triple crown. Then we won 4, and we said 4 aces. And then we won 5, and we're like, well, what's 5? 5 aces. Then we won 6. And then eventually we won 16, and that was sweet 16. And then we won 21, and then we kind of did a gambling thing. But we won 46 over the years. And at some point, I almost became embarrassed because it was the same people winning every year over and over and over. And you know what I'm talking about, over and over. And I'm not criticizing those people.
Backs with the same people.
It's all the same. And then the companies producing the awards wanted to sell more awards. I wanted to get more people, you know, investing in the process. So all of a sudden they'd come up with more categories like manufacturers of this, where the machines are between blue and off blue. I'm being ridiculous, but it just became pre-selected. And we were advertising like crazy. We were in pretty much all the print ads and, you know, back in the day. And then, you know, we'd buy banner ads on websites and all this stuff. And one day we had this elaborate booth at Apex, at a big trade show. It was a waterfall booth, and basically was 30 feet wide, 16 feet high, and it dropped images and water droplets. It was like an inkjet printer with water, and words and images would fall from the sky. And it was amazing. It was super expensive. And it was amazing. And I had a customer come up to me just before the show opened, or a person came up before the show opened, and he says, do you mind if I take a picture of your waterfall? It's incredible. Never seen anything like it. I'm like, of course. And then he looks at me and goes, would it be too much trouble to have you guys move the machines out of the way so I can get a better view of the waterfall? And Phil, it just, boom, it just hit me. Just hit me. What the hell are we doing? What the hell are we doing? We are creating noise. We're creating, look at us, look at us. We're the shiny object in the corner. And why are we doing this? And that was the last show we went to. We decided cold turkey, talk about a fearful decision. We decided cold turkey to stop all advertising, traditional advertising, and no more trade shows. That's it. And we were known for this crazy stuff. And we just stopped. And then we decided that, okay, we're not going to advertise. We still need to be relevant. How do we be relevant? Education. Let's teach people. Let's teach the industry. Let's invest in our industry. Smart people make smart choices. Educated people make educated choices. Let's educate. And so now, you know, I do podcasts that have nothing to do with my company. I talk about reliability, but to me, all the education we do is like the old days of locomotives. The old steam locomotives had at least 2 employees. They had the engineer who drove the train and the fireman who shoveled coal into the furnace. That fireman had no idea which lump of coal took that train which mile, but they know that they're shoveling energy to make fire, to boil water, to propel the train down the track. And to me, every podcast, every webinar, every paper, every symposium is a lump of coal in the furnace.
Yeah.
It just generates energy. And I can't tell you what results from that specifically. I just know that we support our industry, and the sales gods of the world bless us with success.
Some business as a result.
It just works that way. And not to sound religious or new agey or anything like that. None of that. But you just have to stay relevant. And you can stay relevant by beating a drum and saying how cool you are and how bitchin' your products are, and your red machine is sexier than their red machine. But at some point, it's just noise. It's just noise. Yeah. And
the other thing I love about that education process, and I think it's super important for entrepreneurs, is that whilst you're educating people, you're also talking to more and more people, you're interviewing people on your podcast, you're learning more. And it's education is a two-way street every day for a CEO or for a leader, and particularly for an entrepreneur. Every day should be a school day. I know when you start the business, you probably think you know it all. And that arrogance is powerful, as you said, and that naivety is powerful. But I think as you get to that mature stage in a business, you are just like you might be out there sharing information, but you're like a sponge. You're sucking up information from the industry. You're learning what the industry needs. Every educational symposium you do on cleaning gives you an idea of the cleaning challenges faced by your customers and your potential customers. So those little Q&A sessions at the end of your presentation,
that becomes material for the next presentation. Absolutely.
That defines your next product. So I think that's I think that education, that switch you made there, I think was really important. And it's a lesson to people. And it's not a lesson that just says, hey, we should all stop doing trade shows, because if we all stop doing trade shows, there won't be any trade shows. And you're still going to the trade shows, absorbing information. But
I'm a big proponent. And what we did, it's like, don't try this at home. I'm not suggesting for a second. I'm glad you said that, because I'm not suggesting for a second. We could not, if I came up with a new product today, or if I was a new company today, no one knew who Mike Konrad was or Aqueous Technologies is. If we were just, new on the scene, we got to pay our dues. We got to run ads. We have to go to trade shows. We have to write papers. We have to do all those things. We have to go through the gears. We have to shift from first to fifth, right? You can't cheat and skip it. But there comes a point where you just knew it's not that something's over. It's what's next. What's the next thing? And that just becomes the next. And I'm sure 10 years from now, you and I will talk. And I'll say, remember the days we were doing this, when I thought this was everything. And then I realized how stupid I am today. Right. Yeah. Remember podcasts? Yeah. Now it's all VR stuff, whatever the case is now. But
no, I agree. It's absolutely fascinating. And that brings me to a question I want to wrap up with, because I know we could speak much longer than we should.
This is a mini series, right? It's
absolutely. This is
first
part
of 10
one
parts.
Of the mini series.
Yes, exactly.
So where next? Where next for Aqueous Technologies? Where next for Mike Konrad?
Interesting question. Aqueous is going strong. We're really pushing environmental, green cleaning. We're really experiencing a renaissance in cleaning. When I started the business, I started around the time of the Montreal Protocol. I started when cleaning went away, because not long after I started the company, no clean became the predominant flux technology. Okay, that was bad timing. And we've witnessed, and maybe even contributed to, through education, the resurgence of cleaning. And boards are getting smaller, miniaturization's taking over. There's no space left on an assembly anymore for anything. And it turns out all that results in the lowering of the tolerance for residue. So cleaning has kind of come back in full force again, which is also a challenge because there are two types, generally speaking, there are two types of customers. There's customers that used to clean back in the 80s that haven't cleaned since, and now all of a sudden they're told they have to clean again. So they go out looking for 1,1,1 trichloroethane and a Baron Blakeslee degreaser to put it in, and they find out that they can't do that anymore. So we have to educate them into what's changed since the days they used to clean. Or you have the younger engineers that are newer on the scene that it says here, no clean. Why are you saying I need to clean? It might as well say don't clean.
Yeah.
And our major competitor is a product that says, basically don't clean me. And no one's telling them that, well, there's a reason why people clean. And so the only way we can continue to be relevant and grow is, and make the world a better place, hopefully, is to educate. These are the factors that affect reliability. It may not apply to you. If you're not cleaning and your products are reliable,
then well done.
Hang up the phone. Don't talk to me. Go and spend time with your family. Do something productive. You don't need to talk to me. However, if you're having this problem, you can't figure out why, and it can't be a cleaning thing because the jar says no clean, and you're doing that right. You're following the instruction, but there's still a trouble. That's where the education, we just see the light bulbs go on. And so we're seeing more and more light bulbs. So we're kind of in a second stage, well, probably not a second stage, probably a 200th stage, but we're in this new stage of, instead of selling cleaning technology and promoting it as an alternative technology for high rel people, space and military type people, medical people, all of a sudden, because of IoT, all this cheap stuff's coming on the market that needs to be cleaned because it's out in a harsh environment. So we have an opportunity to teach the world to sing again, and that's fun because we're doing it differently today. We're starting off educating this newer breed of customer differently than we did before. Before it was bravado, and now it's true education. So we're finding out what it's like to do it right the first time, or the first time over again. And it seems to be a lot more effective. Second time out, you run out the kinks and do our shakedown cruise and then bring the passengers on. And now I'm happy to say the passengers are showing up, and hopefully their experience, not just with our company, but just with the technology in general, regardless of who they buy from, will be much better. People learn from each other. We hope to train our competitors as much as we hope to train our customers, and we hope to be trained by our competitors and our customers just as much as we hope to train. So it's a two-way street.
Yeah. And I think what's really interesting there, Mike, and we'll talk about this another time, but you've kind of extended that desire to educate, that desire to share information into the work you do with the SMTA and with the wider industry, and the way you've developed the brand on the podcast as well, where you're not just talking about reliability and technology, you're talking about entrepreneurialism and different things. I think there's some really interesting elements there, and we'll touch on those another time. But for today, thanks so much for your time. Congratulations on that 30 years of success. I'll raise a glass to the next 30 years when it's an appropriate time of day here in Australia. And we'll talk again soon. Enjoy your vacation, and look forward to chatting again. Thanks.
Sounds good. Always a pleasure, Phil.